Sarah here from jacksonsjob.com, and today I'm going to share with you how to make delicious homemade Millionaire shortbread. This is a bit time consuming but well worth the wait. Here are the ingredients, but there will be a link below that will give you full written recipe including pictures and nutrition information, so don't worry about pausing the video. Let's get started with a 9 by 13 pan or a 23 by 33 centimeter if that's the way you use your measurements. You want to line it with parchment paper or aluminum foil. Do not use wax paper, because if you use wax paper, it will stick to your caramel and make you very sad. Next, preheat your oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 degrees Celsius. Then you want to start out with 2¼ cups of flour or 339 grams. To this, add in a half a cup of sugar or 113 grams and mix this together with your hand. You'll want to add in 1 cup of butter or 226 grams. I do recommend using metric scales if you have them available to you, as the US is off by a few grams. For this recipe it won't matter too much, but for future recipes it really will make a difference. The next thing you want to do is rub this in between your fingers until you get a bread-like consistency. Now you can use the creaming method as I have in a previous recipe on how to make shortbread, or you also can use a food processor. I'm just using this method because I like that it gives a really nice crumbly texture that falls apart and melts in your mouth. You will make a little bit of a mess here, so don't worry. Now if you look in the background, you'll see a rare appearance from Jackson himself, followed by Maggie. In these videos you'll always see an animal. I don't know what it is about the kitchen, but they seem to always know that I make a mess and they're there to help me clean up. Once it looks like breadcrumbs, bring back your pan. You'll want to pour it in and it'll be very loose. You'll think this will never fit in there, but trust me, as you spread it out and level it and press down, it packs really well. Think of a sandcastle at the beach. It's actually kind of fun to play with. If it sticks to your hand really badly, that just means the butter has warmed up a little bit too much, and you can fix this problem by chilling it in the fridge for about 20 minutes and then continuing. Once you get it patted down really well, you can chill it overnight if you want to make it the next day, or you could chill it just for a little bit if your time is restricted. You also can put it straight in the oven as it is. It's really up to you at this point. I kind of like the recipe because you can stop and start it between layers. You'll want to put this in the oven for 35 to 45 minutes or until the edges are lightly golden brown and just start to separate from the pan. You do not want to bake this at a high temperature because it will make it too crumbly. Now if you notice the little pit marks, that is from butter that wasn't finely ground, and that is okay. It just leads to character. Let's move on to making caramel. You want to start out with half a cup or 113 grams of butter. If you grease the sides of the pan like I'm doing here, it helps keep the crystals from forming and ruining your caramel. To that you want to add in 1 cup or 200 grams of white sugar and 1 cup or 226 grams of brown sugar. And then you just stir this together until the butter is melted on a low heat. Once you got that done, you put in 2 cups or 480 milliliters of cream. If you do not have cream, you can use 1 12 fluid ounce can of evaporated milk. But if you use the evaporated milk, I recommend you put in 1 teaspoon or 5 milliliters of vanilla, because the can does tend to have a metallic taste to it to some people. It's not a big deal if this happens, because as it sits, it will absorb the flavor and the metallic taste tends to go away with time. However, some people who are super sensitive to it will always taste it. That's why I prefer to use fresh cream. Once you have this all combined, you will want to keep it on a low heat and cover it and leave it for 5 to 10 minutes. This will allow the sugar to start to dissolve, and it will keep the caramel from getting grainy. A lot of people want to rush this step, and that's why they end up with crystallized sugar or grainy caramel. And it's really gross if you don't get it well dissolved. So just take your time with caramel. Start out low and slow. After 10 minutes, you'll see it's turned a nice amber color and it feels more fluid. You don't really feel any grains of sugar. At this point, you can turn the heat up to medium high, but you want to make sure you stick with this. Do not walk away. I also recommend you have a small dish with some ice water in it just in case some of this splashes on you, because this really hurts if it burns. As you can see, it's very fluid and it's starting to bubble up pretty quickly. This could boil over very fast if you don't keep it consistently stirring and at a low gradual heat. This will take around 20 to 40 minutes depending on how fast you want to cook it. I like to cook it around medium-low and it takes about 20 minutes total. It's a little bit time consuming, so I'm going to just show you some of the steps and what to look for. As you can see, around 219 it will start to get to where it's starting to drop. This is what you want to happen. Once that happens, it's going to start rising in temperature a lot quicker. You can use a gloved hand to keep from splattering on you because this stuff will splatter. Now once it gets to around 226 or so, it will drop significantly and the consistency will get actually a little bit thicker and it'll feel quite a bit like maple syrup. Just keep cooking it down until you get to 240 to 245 degrees Fahrenheit or 115 degrees or 118 degrees Celsius. Now you'll want to pour it over top of your shortbread. A lot of times the caramel will level off itself and fill in the corners. However, if that doesn't happen, use a gloved hand and carefully tilt the caramel into each of the corners. Make sure that you're wearing a oven mitt because the caramel will heat up the pan and you do not want to splash yourself with caramel. It is very, very hot. I've gotten pretty gnarly burns from caramel making. Finally, let this sit for at least 10 minutes and add salt if desired. Once you've done that, you want to let it set 1 to 2 hours or until firm before you put on the chocolate. Once the caramel is set, you'll want to melt some chocolate. You can do this on the stovetop, but I really like the microwave method. It's a lot simpler and quicker. You'll want to start out with 3 bars, 1.5 cups, or 340 grams of chocolate. You'll want to melt 3/4 of this and set aside the remaining 1/4. Now use a high quality dark chocolate because the caramel is so sweet. You don't want milk chocolate here. Now you could use milk chocolate if you're one of those people who really like sweet stuff, but I highly recommend at least a 70% chocolate. Now what I like to do is microwave this in the initial stage at 30 seconds, full power, and then give it a very good stir. Make sure you stir this in between each time because if not, you can burn your chocolate. Once the first 30 seconds is done, you want to start microwaving this 10 seconds at a time and then stirring. I know that sounds like a little bit of time, but it's better to go slower than to microwave too fast and burn your chocolate. Each microwave is different, so you'll get to learn yours and you may want to go a little bit further. Once this is fully melted, you want to add in the remaining chocolate. What that does is it helps temper it. Tempering is basically the nice snap you get to chocolate when it cools, and it will also help the chocolate set. If for some reason your chocolate does not temper, it's not the end of the world. All you'll have to do is chill this dish for a little bit of time before you cut it, and just keep it a little bit chilled before you serve it. It will taste wonderful either way. However, if you follow my directions, you should have a nice sheen and a nice snap to your chocolate. Now you just want to stir it until the remaining chocolate melts. If for some reason the chocolate doesn't melt after letting it sit for a while and it isn't very fluid like this, you can put it back in the microwave for about 5 seconds at a time, stirring in between each time. Next, just pour it on top of your caramel like so, and then spread it out. Now, if you have an offset spatula, you could make this a really smooth top and it could be really professional looking. However, I am using my spatula that I'm used to melt the chocolate because I like the rustic look it gives. I think it's kind of pretty seeing the little nooks and crannies and the raised areas that aren't perfectly smooth. It's just kind of one of those things that gives it a homemade look. It's really a preference choice at this point. You want to make sure you get it into the corners and you get it spread out well. Try to get as even layer as you possibly can. And if you don't, it's okay. It still tastes amazing. As you can see, I'm making a bit of a mess here. When it comes to baking, you're always going to make a mess, and it's something that you're just going to have to learn to live with. I actually think it's good to use your hands and really just take your time and see like how you can screw things up and still have this beautiful, delicious dessert everyone will enjoy. It kind of humbles you a bit. Now once you get this spread out evenly, you're going to need to let this set at least 10 minutes before it becomes hard enough to put in the refrigerator if you need to leave it for the rest of the day. However, I like to let it set completely for about 2 hours on this countertop so it gets a really nice sheen and a nice snap all the way through. Now I'm going to show you how to cut this briefly. You want to use a serrated knife. A bread knife works really good. And you'll do a sawing motion with the chocolate to begin with. What happens is when you use the chocolate and you temper it well, if you try to use a regular knife, it can shatter the chocolate and can make it splintered. This just helps with the presentation. Now if you notice, that parchment paper just slid right off. That's why I prefer to use the parchment over the aluminum foil. Aluminum foil will work, but it tends to stick to the caramel more. So if you can afford it, pick up a roll of parchment paper. It's like your best friend in the kitchen. Now you just use a back and forth motion with the serrated knife until you get broken through to the chocolate. Once you get a nice line, you can press straight down and it will snap the cookie in half. You do this until you have it completely cut and you go on to the next stage. If you enjoyed this recipe, please visit jacksonsjob.com for more and like and subscribe for future recipes to come.